the content of the class is actually going to be somewhat different from what I wrote to Marcus originally. I was going to do something more, or no, I described something that's more sort of formal semantics and recent things, but after having arrived here, I think it is better to do something sort of more grounded and in part practical, and then sort of I mean, I'm going to introduce or talk also about some recent results where the expression of complement clauses varies from one language to another. But I'm going to mostly focus on providing you with the tools, some tools at least, the method of kind of collecting data on the expression of what in English is expressed by complement clauses, and the goal, sort of the practical goal, really is that you are in a position at the end of these 3 classes that I have to sort of elicit scenarios where in English at least you would expect people to produce complement clauses, elicit sentences in such scenarios, and then well, and I mean you have to somehow get them transcribed and so on, and that you then organize them in a kind of database in this software that's called Toolbox that I have here, and then organize them in such a way that you can actually, I mean, as I have done this here sort of as an illustration for German. So you see here's a German sentence, right? So that's Maria glaubt, dass das Buch in dem Regal ist. You can see this here, and then the gloss of that. No, so this is just a morphemic transcription. So it's only here glaubt is split up into the verb stem and an affix, and then we have here an English gloss, and there's something else here, and here's a translation. Yeah? Yeah? I don't know. You're not satisfied? I mean, it's fairly good. Yeah. I can't get it any better than this. So, am I standing here in somebody's way, Rafael? It would be better if you moved, because now I sort of here have set up all this stuff here, if that's possible. Thank you. Okay, so and I mean in the software you can also set this up in such a way that you can then play the sentence. So this, yeah, I will demonstrate by playing this. Maria glaubt, dass das Buch in dem Regal ist. I mean, it's quite possible that you couldn't hear this, but I just wanted to show you that in the software you can, if you do set up things right, you can actually have sort of a link to the audio file, and so you can always, even after you transcribe things and so on, go back and it is. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, who in this class here? I mean, I know that at the museum, I've heard that at the museum there are several documentation projects. I don't know what kind of software they use. I mean, and possibly what I'm using here is kind of old-fashioned to some of you, or no, who knows here this Toolbox software? Yeah, you all know this. Okay, so so maybe I mean, I can learn something from you as well. I mean, the idea is really to sort of, I mean, I don't have to always be standing in front here. I'm just going to show you sort of how I do things, and I mean, then we'll also talk about the analysis and work on that to some extent together. So the plan is also to actually here, so Wendy has volunteered for today to allow us to elicit some Vapichana sentences, and then we can together analyze some of them, and maybe, I mean, if there are other languages represented in the audience, we can also try out some more things there. And I mean, I actually didn't know until this morning that I will be getting papers from some of you at the after this class is over at some point. So it would be nice. I mean, I am looking forward to receiving several papers with sort of a description of different types of complementation structures in a number of languages, and hopefully like with audio and everything. So that's sort of the goal, to put you in a position where you can do that, and can do that fairly easily. I mean, it's not rocket science what I'm doing here. I'm aware of that. Yeah, at the same time, I mean, we'll try to provide you with sort of some theoretical concepts to describe the phenomena, and you should be aware of the fact that there's very little work actually on embedded sentences in South American languages. There's one recent book that I have here. Here's this by Van Gijn. I don't know. This came out 2 years ago and has sort of a few isolated studies, and it's on subordination in general. So actually, there's also quite a bit on relative clauses in that book. But I mean, there's really very little. So I think this is so the study of complement clauses is really a good area, I think, for people to make contributions, because so little is known, and as I'll introduce in a minute, I mean, a lot of variation that has been recently discovered in other languages might be. No, sorry, I'm now wrong. I mean, there probably are similar discoveries waiting to be made by looking at some South American indigenous languages or Brazilian languages. Okay, now how do I do this? So now we'll sort of follow the handout. Full screen presentation. Full screen. Is this good? Yeah, great. Yeah. So so the plan is that I today kind of introduce some basic descriptive categories or sort of basic terms of the analysis, but I also introduce some briefly this. I mean, I'll show you basically the way I've been collecting data and organizing it and trying to analyze it. As I said, I mean, I might be old-fashioned and way behind the curve. If you have any suggestions for improvement, that's very welcome as we go through this. And then I would be happy if I mean, I'm actually trying to get you to do something new here that goes beyond sort of the work that I've done. That we try out a little bit of that on Wednesday in kind of a collaborative setting, so I don't have to. I mean, I definitely will not be standing here in front for 3 hours. On Friday, then maybe we will. I mean, hopefully, have some interesting things to say about the analysis of some of the data that we'll have collected by then. Hopefully, I mean, if we don't have anything interesting to say, then I'll dive more deeply into formal semantics on Friday. So that's also a possibility. I should say, I mean, I hope I'm not talking too fast. I tend to talk. I mean, usually I don't not talk very fast, I think, but I never learned that yet. But so I have an advantage over Tom in that respect. But I'm here a little nervous and I get a little too fast. So I mean, you're welcome to interrupt me if you don't understand, and also you can maybe ask somebody to translate into Portuguese. Don't ask me, so please. So, okay, so so I mean, this basic method that I'm advocating here. I meant to say something else. Well, I'll do that in a little while. Is doing some kind of controlled elicitation of. I mean, this might. I mean, it's definitely not always necessary, but I think there are many settings where that's kind of a useful way of studying embedded clauses. I mean, for one, I mean, the one scenario is sort of with a PRH where there's a big debate, and you want to make sure that you have kind of reliable evidence, or maybe at least evidence that you can show to other people and not just allegations. Some way. I mean, and I mean, so then you might think, well, you could just get people to tell stories, which is something that a lot of sort of more so more established people in fieldwork like to do that. They like to collect stories and then somehow get them transcribed. I mean, I think they're cheating there when they are doing that. Probably then they do also some elicitation, but then they go back and somehow do a description of the grammar just based on the analysis of the stories. I don't know how to do that for one, but I also don't think it's a good method for looking at kind of what we are interested in here, the sort of more complex sentences where you have one sentence embedded in another, because even for English, people know that these don't occur very frequently. So I'm put here on the handout. We're a little bit lower now here. Here there's sort of something that you can read about this in English. Like there's a sort of a paper by this woman named, I think, Sally Thompson, who says, I mean, who looked at a sort of corpus from free speech, so it's sort of telephone conversations that were recorded and transcribed, and looked at examples of embedded structures in those, 500 examples roughly, and then she asked, well, how many of those sort of do we really need an analysis, so need to give an analysis an embedded clause. And so this is sort of against the background that she thinks that, for example, I mean, frequent example of a use of embedded clause is something like I think that, and then something I think that the Socialist Party is better or something, and where really the I think that, I mean, only sort of I mean, this in this literature is the idea, well, this is really the sentences about the Socialist Party being better, and this I think that is a kind of comment rather on this. Even though it syntactically seems to have the structure of an embedded sentence, the idea is that it's more like an evidential marking in English. And so actually she finds that in this analysis of these 500 examples, only one sort of must be analyzed as an embedded clause, and this is sort of in the. I mean, I don't agree with really with the terms of this analysis, but it kind of shows that in most examples of where in English an embedded clause is used in normal speech, it actually wouldn't be necessary to express it with an embedded clause. So if you look just at free speech, where we don't know what the structure of an example is, we couldn't tell whether that is an embedded clause or whether that is some other structure. So and if this holds for English speech, we would expect that to hold as well for for other languages, roughly. I mean, there's sort of a response to this work by Thomson, by Fritz Neumeyer, who shows then that if you look at a much bigger corpus, where you have tens of thousands of examples, then you find plenty of evidence that English does have embedded sentences, which wasn't sort of under debate. But to some extent, the claim by Thomson was that, well, in English spoken speech, you just don't have embedded sentences, with the exception of this one example. But I mean, that doesn't seem to be true anyway. But I mean, but it's so for us, it's mostly here sort of important for this methodological decision that we can't just look at telephone conversations and hope to find sort of by chance a clear example of an embedded sentence. I mean, even for English, that doesn't seem to work. And so if we do that for another language, we also wouldn't expect this to work. So we have to somehow elicit these examples. I mean, unless we have years of time to gather, like, not just 500, but several thousand of sort of potential examples of embedding, and then we could also construct an argument on the basis of that, possibly. But so we will do this elicitation. Another reason maybe for doing elicitation, I think, is that maybe applies here to some cases, is that I mean, often the best speakers are actually older speakers who are not so comfortable. I mean, at least to work with, it wouldn't be comfortable to work with somebody like me, maybe, or maybe, I mean, most of you blend in better, so you would have maybe less of that problem. But I mean, they still would be not so available to work with a linguist for sort of several days in a row and going over the same sentence with slight variations or something to figure out how the grammar works. But on the other hand, I mean, if they are the best speakers, they should have some input on what you say about language. So if you kind of have some younger, maybe not so fluent anymore speakers, but can do with them kind of an analysis of some of the data you get from older speakers, that would be a good method, I think. And yeah, so the other thing I put here is, I mean, you get some kind of rough idea of how frequently, if there's different structures or maybe different grammars or something involved in here, Tom and Luis's sense, and you get an idea of roughly how frequent each of them are and what kind of variation they might exist. And finally, if you do this elicitation, you also have material for doing phonetic analysis, of which Andrew is going to be talking about tomorrow, I gather from the schedule. So so you would be killing, the English expression is, you kill two birds with one stone. If you do this, you can then do also something that satisfies Andrew, hopefully. Okay, don't know. Any questions so far about what we are up to or doing? No. So then let's go on. I mean, I'm just going to now introduce very basic terminology for describing complement clauses in English. And maybe this is, so these are in some sense maybe only the main types of complement clauses, and additions can be made by you as we go through this. So one type is basically consists of finite clauses. So you have one verb in a sentence, the matrix verb, that is always finite. But then you have another verb here, the is or something, or invited, that has sort of arguments of its own, has its own clause, and is an argument of the matrix predicate. So, like Bill believes Mary is nice, or Bill believes that Mary is nice. So you can optionally have the complementizer in English. This is so we call this a finite clause. Here's a Mary is nice, or that Mary is nice, is a complement of belief. Or here is a ending beliefs, and that in English is a complementizer. So these you also have in Portuguese, as with K. I think it's in Portuguese K is obligatory for these kinds of sentences. So there's a difference here already between Portuguese and English, but nothing dramatic yet. What is here then? Here we have like an embedded question. So here you have then a different complementizer, the whether in English. So John wonders whether Mary is nice, and you can see here, in English, the declarative complement here, Mary is nice, looks, unless you put the that, it looks exactly like a matrix clause. Mary is nice, so like an assertion. When you look at questions, you can't embed just what is a matrix question. So is Mary nice is a matrix question, but you cannot do John wonders is Mary nice, or can you? It's, I think, at least a little odd in English, or maybe. I come back to the fact that in some languages do allow these embedded root phenomena. For those of you who went to the workshop, there was also the talk by Guillaume on embedded imperatives, which kind of is basically a structure, sort of a phenomenon in this category here, that you have not John wonder but John order, and then go to the store or whatever, where you have the, which is also not possible in English, but in some languages seems to be possible, that you embed also things that are sort of marked as independent matrix clauses. Or at least have some sort of marking that usually occurs only in independent matrix clauses. Also in Portuguese you can, this is sort of side remark, in English you can't embed yes, right? You can't say I believe yes, but in Portuguese, for example, you can do that, right? Eu acho que sim. So languages in that respect also vary, and that's kind of something that's interesting to describe. And we don't know how most languages behave in this respect. Okay, what do we have here? Oh, this is now an embedded constituent question, and you can see that also the constituent questions here, or WH questions, who Mary invited, is the embedded form. As an argument of no, John knows who Mary invited. It's different from the matrix question. So you can't put, the matrix question would be who did Mary invite, and that cannot occur as a complement. Okay, so for much of the following, finite clauses will be sort of, I think, the most relevant. But once you are comfortable with finite clauses, or then you would want to move on to look at non-finite clauses, and what things that are expressed by non-finite clauses in English. Again, languages might very well vary with respect to this. What is expressed by finite clauses, by non-finite clauses? Including languages like I believe here Quechua languages just do not have an embedded finite clauses, so they don't have this type of structure at all. So so now we look at infinitival clauses or infinitives, and I mean here, I mean I'm sure there are people in the audience who can describe this much better. But so basically in English there's these structures that have been described as control. So there's a kind of an argument of the matrix predicate, and there must be also an argument of the embedded predicate, which is now infinitival, and that is kind of, the reference of that is determined by an argument of the matrix predicate. But these sort of are two independent arguments. So you have here John try to visit Mary. John is the argument here of try, and I mean John is doing something as he is trying, but then it's also I mean, in some sense an argument of visit, right? So and this is usually represented as we see here. There is a silent pronoun, and that's the argument of visit. I mean, these structures are debated, and I mean possibly some of the evidence that we can look at in the following maybe shed some light on what exactly should be the right analysis of such structures. But, and here B is just showing you, so this would be called subject control. B is illustrating object control. So Mary convinced John to visit her. It's now John who is doing the visiting. So this, but John also has to be, I mean, it's in some sense an argument of convince. I mean, you could basically I mean, you could sort of also express this as these cases of object control. You can usually also paraphrase with giving two sort of embedded verbs and then using subject control. So in this case, it would be something like Mary managed to, no, I'm not very successful. I was thinking about a different example. I mean, Mary did something so that John wanted to visit her or something. So this somehow might, I mean, it relates here to John want to visit her or something. Yeah, okay, so that's control. Yeah, I mean, since I have little idea of what your respective backgrounds is, I'm feeling a little uneasy if I. Yeah, so that would be a sort of a way of expressing it. Yeah, with these two verbs. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so then another type of embedded infinitival clause in English is structures like John seems to arrive soon, and these sort of have a different interpretation to them. And the seem is not something that is really a predicate that's applied to John. It's just the circumstances are such that it seems that John will arrive soon. And so these are usually analyzed as John being not a predicate of seem, but just a predicate of arrive, an argument of arrive. And then there's some kind of transformation that sort of gives us, I mean, that moves it here to the subject position of the matrix verb. No. Oh no, I'm here. Right? And so the count on it, right? It might be. Well, at least I'm back for now. I might have touched the cable down here. Okay, so then, yeah, the counterpart in some sense of that is something like John expects Mary to arrive soon. So here Mary doesn't really, I mean, it's not really that, I mean, well, I should have really done John expects Mary to leave soon. So John is here not expecting Mary, but he is expecting some event that Mary or some other thing. So Mary is not really an object here of expect, but only the argument of arrive. But nevertheless, sort of has this. I mean, if you in English, if you had a pronoun here, then you would have accusative case. John expects her to arrive soon. And then there are bare infinitivals in English as well. They occur with modal verbs, so the must or can or something like that. So John must water the lawn. I realize that I should have sort of been much more careful about making these examples. Water is here, verb here. Yeah. So John must, I don't know, sprinkle the lawn. That would be more clearly visible as a verb. And then John saw Mary water the lawn. So these perception verbs, they also don't have the to in English. Finally, there's these examples that in the English literature was given where there's an infinitival clause with a complementizer. So John hopes for Mary to water the lawn. And here for then is analyzed as a complementizer, because I mean from the meaning of it, it seems that he Mary to water the lawn, or Mary's watering the lawn. The whole sentence is the object of hoping here. It's not just Mary or on her own. Right? Okay, and finally, something that I know very little about. There are also gerunds in English, so nominalizations with this ing marker. And well, these also, like the infinitives, have neither tense nor agreement, but can take arguments. So John appreciates Mary's watering the lawn. It's kind of, here's a Mary's watering the lawn expresses the same thing as here we have John saw Mary water the lawn. Right? Okay, so that's those are. I mean, this was just sort of to make sure that we have some common terminology to talk about these things. It might also be that my terminology is old-fashioned here because I learned syntax in the 90s and haven't progressed much since. So if you use other terms that are sort of more hip or something, then please translate once for me, and then I promise I'll try to remember. Okay. Okay, now I don't know. I mean, did I forget anything major? Or I meant to, but I didn't manage to look a little bit at what's in Brazilian Portuguese complementation structures going on. I mean, I gather that there are also finite and non-finite embedded clauses. I think, with European Portuguese, there's sort of one famous thing that in European Portuguese there can be non-finite, so tenseless embedded verbs, but they nevertheless have some form of agreement. But I don't know whether this is the case in Brazilian Portuguese as well. Yes. No? Well. Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So maybe I should have invited you to just give the Brazilian Portuguese overview, sort of in this on one page as well, so that people can see the what the terms mean that as I use them here in the following. Yeah, this is basically English. Maybe I meant to say. I mean, there are also, as a type of complement clause, there are quotations as well in English. So also finite clauses, but those that cannot take a complement. That would be something like John said, I'm happy, where that's an actual report of John saying I'm happy. Right? John talking about John. These might be added here. Should have been here. I now wanted to sort of to motivate you for the remainder of this class. So for this practical work, wanted to point out to you that, I mean, English is by no means the only language, and actually, I mean, a lot has been learned about some variation in this system of one clause taking another clause as an argument from looking at various other languages, and I mean, most languages differ in some way from English, and I mean, at this point here I kind of list some isolated interesting facts from other languages that show you some way in which these languages differ from English. I mean, I don't think anybody has sort of a systematic overview of sort of possible variations that there are. Yeah, this gives me an opportunity. Before I go into this, I did actually get the papers that I cite here for the most part and put them on a memory stick. So I can also make these available with some Dropbox or something. But for those of you who want to have things right away and have a computer here, they can have this memory stick. I put it up here, maybe in the break you can get it or something. It also has actually the software that I'm gonna use for the more practical part somewhere. The stick. Yeah, what time? Yeah, that's thank you very much. That's great, Sileni. So actually, I have no idea how. No, I'm not so slow. Okay, so yeah, so here is some. I mean, this is now possibly for those of you who are not so advanced, a little difficult to follow all of these, but takes this sort of as an indication that if you study embedded sentences, or especially complement clauses, there's a good chance that you'll discover something interesting and new in whichever language you study, because it just seems to be substantial variation between languages. So one thing here that I mean, cite here is, I mean, that was discovered by Ogihara already. I mean, before this 2013 paper. I give here the references that I'm citing. Was discovered by him actually 20 years ago already. So the recent here is a little sort of with quotation marks. I mean, but if you, I mean, in some ways it's justified to call even that recent, because if you look at sort of older descriptive grammars, and basically you don't find much about complex sentences in these grammars, and so I think a lot of this sort of you can see, yes, I mean, for hundreds of years people thought that embedded sentences work more or less like in English and maybe Latin across languages, and this, in that sense, really this variation is a more recent discovery, even if it's 20 years old here. So the point of the Japanese example concerns tense in embedded sentences, and so I give in A an English example, then in B a Japanese example. And in English, what is so the relevant thing is that under a past tense matrix verb, the complement clause usually also bears past tense, but and that's even the case if kind of these two events happen simultaneously. So this would be here, Joseph believed in 2005 that Mary loved him then. I mean, it could be that Mary loved him in 1999, so even 6 years earlier. And then this tense, the loved, the past tense, would be kind of, here we are going back to 2005, and then, I mean, what we are reporting then is that at the time Joseph had to believe, oh, Mary loved me in 1999 with a past tense. But in English, it could also be that Joseph believed in 2005, if you sort of imagine him talking to himself, what he believed was, well, Mary loves me. And this we would report in English, nevertheless, so even though the loving happened simultaneously with the belief, would be reported with a past tense. This is called sequence of tense in English, this phenomenon. And now there's this discovery that goes back to Ogihara, is that Japanese doesn't allow this. Japanese does not have this sequence of tense phenomenon. So when you have something like this here, here in Japanese the verbs are at the end. Yeah, now I found them here. So sorry, this goes out of all these 3 lines here. So we have here believe with past tense, that's a ta. Unfortunately, the Japanese visitors left, so this is something like shinji teita. Or well, maybe fortunately they left, so I can butcher you with my Japanese here. Butcher Japanese for you. And the main thing is here that, I mean, so here we have also past tense, but when the embedded predicate also has past tense. Here's a this would be like loved. I steita to. Then this event described really has to be past the belief. So this, it's okay if this happened in 1999. So the believing happens in 2005. This is a literal translation of that example. If the loving happened in 1999 and ended by 2005, this is a sort of good description. But or the believed loving, really. But if John in 2005 was thinking, "Oh, Mary loves me," with present tense, then the only way to report that in Japanese would be to also is to put the present tense here. So the past tense here is not okay. That's what this hatch mark here is supposed to indicate. Yeah. And so yeah. So this is one of the important discoveries of the last 20 years. So that not all languages have this sequence of tense in the way that English does. Yeah. And by now it's kind of known that actually English sequence of tense is, I think, rather rare cross-linguistically. I mean, in many languages you actually get a special mood on the embedded verb. So in Portuguese you have the subjunctive, and maybe then you cannot tell anymore whether you have sequence of tense or not. And trying to as far as I know, there's only one other language really that has English type sequence of tense, and I'm trying to remember which language it is, but I don't remember right now. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so maybe I'll have something to report. Okay, you go on to something else, maybe. Yeah. Another important. I mean, in some way, I am mentioning these things because this is kind of variation that if you look at whatever language you want to look at, is a type of variation you might encounter. Right? And then there's some points here to connect. So another important phenomenon that's been described mostly in African languages, so Ewe is one of these. And again, I mean, this is a sort of most recent work on this, but originally this was discovered, I think, by Hajej, right? Is that, or Clemens, or what? I forgot. One of those two. I mean, these two. There were two sort of in the 80s, I think, that described such phenomena first. In Hajej, yes, a French linguist. Yeah. Okay, so and the phenomenon is basically is that there are special pronouns that can only occur in embedded sentences, so in complement clauses specifically, I believe. So this is in Ewe, here's a ye, and this thing here. And the English clause here, he, sort of corresponds to how this would be expressed in English. So Kofi said he left, but it's just ungrammatical to put this in a matrix clause. So ye, jo, or something doesn't mean he left or anything, but it just it's impossible. The ye has to occur in a complement clause, and yeah, so he and then this is obligatorily interpreted as being kind of referring in some sense to Kofi. And the most recent discovery on this phenomenon is that, I mean, that it is actually kind of flexible in the way in how it relates to Kofi, but I'll come back to that in a second. Maybe I'm a little slower than I expected. Anyway, yeah, indexical shift is another important, more recently sort of discovered phenomenon. I mean, in some ways that's also sort of was originally described already for American Sign Language and such languages in the 80s and 90s, but then now it has sort of attracted more attention here. So this is an example from my own work, but yeah, because Matsus is actually spoken somewhere in Brazil, so that's a justification for giving you that. But then he works in the conference that was discussed by Schlenker on Amharic, but then also here Andrew and has some work with what's it? Andrew Nevins and what's it? Anand, Pranav Anand has work on language, and this another language where a similar phenomena have been discovered is Uyghur, which is spoken in Western China, and I mean in this domain, I think, I mean at this point it's really just isolated languages that have been described, and they sort of show slightly different behavior yet again, but there's no kind of very good general understanding of sort of this phenomenon. So here's the Matzes type of illustration. So we can have this embedded sentence, I killed, but this I would be referring to the person, to the subject of the embedding verb. So Dashe said that he killed, and then to demonstrate that this is not a sort of a quotation, or is different at least from an English quotation. Here the example shows that you can have extraction out of this complement clause. So this is which type of deer did Dache say he killed in the translation, but it looks sort of, with this first person marking here, it looks like what is in English an ungrammatical sentence, like which type of deer did Dache say, and then quotation marks, I killed. Yeah. Okay, here now something else that has been discovered in Hindi and also in CES is the phenomenon of long distance agreement. This possibly is a little similar to clitic climbing in Portuguese, if that is available. I don't know. In some other Romance languages there are such phenomena that so you, in these cases you have kind of the object of the embedding verb, of the embedded verb, so here book, and this triggers a form of agreement on the matrix verb, even though it's not an argument of that verb. So usually you find agreement only with arguments of a verb. Some cases, like the raising types of cases, you find agreement with the of the embedding verb with an argument of the embedded verb, of the lower verb. But here, I mean, then, and this is something that in English is impossible, but that you find here that you have. Well, I mean, it is the same structure as raising. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, this argument of the embedded verb here now, but now this is an object, and this agrees here with the embedding verb. So anyway, so that's also interesting. I don't know. This maybe it is like to some extent like clitic climbing in Portuguese. Yeah. So in Portuguese, the object could be would normally here sort of be part of the embedded clause, but when it is a clitic pronoun, it might occur up here. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. The object of beijar, mm-hmm. It comes out inside before the matrix. Okay, eu quero beijar.
It's very common.
Yeah. So I'm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, these are also interesting phenomena to describe in more detail. I mean, I'm just sort of making here kind of a list for, I mean, a partial list for things to look out for in this exercise here. And okay, so now the next thing is also something that maybe is available in Portuguese as well, but here I give first a CES example. I mean, this really was, I think, discovered only in the like 10 years ago, and that there are structures that available in CES and some other languages that don't look like English control at all. Namely, I mean, in English control you always express an argument in the matrix sentence, and then you have pro in the embedded sentence, so where the argument is not expressed. So here we have John began to feed the cow, right? It's also John who's doing the feeding, but that is not expressed there. And this is here the pro is controlled by the matrix subject. But then here Polinsky and Potsdam argued that in in here in this, you have the opposite. So it's like you have John here in the embedded clause, and that is the and the subject position of the embedding verb remains empty. So this is here the girl began to feed the cow, and I mean I now don't know on what basis sort of they establish that here girl is really inside of the embedded clause and not the subject of began. But if we sort of grant them, I mean, for that you have to look at the paper, which is here on this memory stick, to look at that in detail. But it's this seems to be a possibility of language in general to have these kind of inverted structure. I mean, the arguments have to do sort of with the scope of when these are quantification. These arguments are expressed by quantificational operators. So you have something like maybe like began. No girl. No, I don't know. I mean, I read the paper at some point, but. No, I don't remember. Maybe it can talk about it on Friday if there's some more interest. And these structures are also, again, people have argued that this, I mean, I don't know to what extent that is accepted, that Brazilian Portuguese has this type of backward control. In fact, in some sense, this was the first language, Brazilian Portuguese was the first language where these were observed, so at the time not, I think, widely read. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so here, this is a relevant example. A professora fez eu apagar o quadro. And the argument is sort of based on the observation here that the eu is a nominative form, which is appropriate for it to be, if it is a subject here of apagar, but if it was the object of fez, that it should be have accusative case here. So whatever that is, me, yeah. And I don't know whether it's also possible, but so the me? I don't ask me. Yeah, that pleases me. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I see. I'm not really that much of a syntactician to really judge all the arguments going back and forth about this phenomenon of backward control. But again, it's sort of, I just mention it because you might run across structures that are more like this in languages that you looking at. Yeah, so and they look, at least if the analysis is correct, and these look quite different from what you have in English. So it's surprising. But, finally, the thing it's sort of I mentioned already. Another phenomenon is that quite a few languages allow what are called embedded root phenomena. So actually, and that they differ, thing from English, and that in these languages, then you can get. I mean, you have first of all you have a sort of clear, distinctive marking of embedded and matrix clauses. So this has been described mostly for German and for other Germanic languages, so Scandinavian. It's worked by Anna-Lena Wiklund on this, and here by my colleague Hubert Struckenbrot, and other people. And the observation, so in German, there are complement clauses that have sort of the orderly complementizer. So that actually I gave this at the beginning, something like with a does, so they look like English. Mary says that, and then the verb would be in the final position. But you can also in German express a complement clause under sort of specific circumstances with the word order that is characteristic of matrix clauses in German. So this is with a verb in second position. So if there was I didn't give the example here, I'm a little unfortunate about that, but here if there was a complementizer here, then the verb would need to occupy the final position of this, and that's kind of the sort of most described way of providing a complement, of giving a complement clause, a finite complement clause in German. But there is also this option often of using the sort of root phenomena, root word order, and so we have that as well. And yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, to some extent, the phenomenon of embedded infinitives that Guillaume Thomas talked about sort of fits into this category. That it's there are languages that seem to allow more of a root clause to go in an embedded clause. We know that we have Andrew here as a native speaker. I mean, earlier I gave these examples that is in English. I think not so good, so I don't actually know any discussion about this. So in English you can't distinguish with declaratives the two word, the matrix and embedded clauses really. But there's nothing here that marks this as an embedded sentence if you don't have the complementizer. But in English, in questions you can do this, and I think that's generally bad. Like John wonders, is Mary nice? Not good. Yeah. So this is something that English doesn't allow, but even closely related languages like German do. So also something that you would expect to occur in other languages. Yeah. Okay. This was another. So I have another two more lists here. I don't know. These are maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we go through or. Okay, yeah, let's maybe go through this. I mean, if I mean, so I mean, the goal here is to put you in a position to provide the complement clause kind of grammar of a language you're studying, and it's, I mean, so it's important that you sort of look at a variety of predicates, because usually specific predicates have sort of specific types of complements that they associate with. So, for example, try can only take an infinitival complement. So in English, John tried to understand the article is okay, but John tried that he understands the article or something, that's out. Right? So they, I mean, I put also on the sticky this. I didn't here put the reference. So this, so in some sense, classic paper by Noonan on from a more typological background, where he lists, amongst other things that he does there. So he sort of talks about hypotaxis and parataxis in this languages. Sileni cited some of Noonan's work on subordination, but he does provide this list of complement taking predicates. CTPs is the abbreviation that he uses, and so we can briefly go through that and sort of note what type of complement these typically go with. So they're the utterance predicates, say and tell, and so on. And these, I mean, ask and promise are already different. But say and tell in English need to usually go with a finite complement clause. Ask and promise are more flexible there. Can go either with finite or with infinitive clauses. So. And of course, ask takes, when it takes an embedded clause, it takes a question rather than like a Z clause, a declarative kind of thing. What did I mean? Yeah, I mean, of course, in English, I mean, so when you look at this list, there are lots and lots of verbs that take complement clauses in some way, and that generally seems to be the case for sort of Western languages with a literary tradition. In languages that are less widely spoken and don't have that much of a literary tradition, usually there would be far fewer such verbs, of course. Or, well, I don't know whether of course, but that seems to be the case. I mean, so actually, a colleague of mine, who is sort of a database-oriented person, actually did for German a collection of all argument-taking predicates, all predicates that come, verbs in German that can take either as a subject or object another complex thing, so something that contains another verb. And I think for German she arrived at a count of about 2,500 verbs that have this possibility, with sort of lots of small variation even between kind of similar verbs. So I mean, in some way, in a language like German or English, you can't, I mean, you can't really in your lifetime and working on your own expect to be very exhaustive in sort of looking at these. Is this microphone? It might be my fault. Or I mean, there's a. Yeah, maybe I move a little bit over to here, or no, no. I just put it more over here, and then I will stand further away from that. Okay. Now I lost my thread here, but yeah, so no, I was going to talk about the fact that, well, you shouldn't aim at being sort of exhaustive and covering possibly all the predicates that there are, but you should sort of rather, I mean, you look at some sort of different types from this list. I think if you enter this, if you do here your project. Okay, so I'm not specifically advocating this Noonan list as being particularly great, but it's sort of the only thing I know really. So that's what I have to offer here. Yeah. Okay. So adherence predicates we talked about. Then there are propositional attitudes. Predicates he calls them. I mean, in propositional attitude in some of the semantic works is sort of a more of a cover term that would apply to at least utterance predicates and these pretense predicates as well. Maybe he also predicates of fearing or whatever. So this would be belief and think primarily. So think is really sort of the more natural in English, and belief is a little hard. I mean, and then there are also negative ones like doubt and deny. So this, I don't know. I mean, might be nice to look at if they do exist somewhere. And then, and yeah, these also typically take finite complements, I guess. Right, and then we have here, pretense predicate like imagine, and make believe, I guess, is sort of related, and then and then some more of this type. Don't know. I mean that. Yeah, I mean, I'm here. It's sort of just a list at this point. I mean, here these predicates that are here. Yeah, factive I was gonna come back to, but I mean maybe. I mean these two classes of predicates are kind of the factive, and some literature these are called semi-factive. So I mean, other literature they're also just called factive. These generally have the property. I mean, for one they can only combine with finite complements. The syntactic property, and also, or do they? At least when they are. Actually, regret doesn't behave that way. Sorry, I'm a little hazy here, but so they, I mean, at least when they combine with a finite complement, they generally entail the truth of the complement. So when we have John regrets that it is raining or something, then that entails that it's actually raining. And also John knows that it's raining entails that it's really raining. Or John knows that that he's wrong, then John must really be wrong. For anybody to sort of felicitously say that. These, I mean, sort of for purposes of just demonstrating that there are embedded sentences, these aren't therefore such a good choice, because if you look at something like John knows that something is a case, and you also look at, then this. If you could also sort of paraphrase it that John knows something, and the following is a case, right? And I mean, in general, so you can also express these. John knows it, or it is raining, and John knows it. So as these, you can really express also by a coordination in some way, with, including a pronoun. And but on the other hand, often I mean, at least in some languages you do find that you have special complementizers with factive predicates specifically. I mean, in English that's not the case. You just have the basic that there, but you can sort of mimic this by thinking about the fact that in English you can also have John knows the fact that or something, and you can put in the fact, and then there seem to be languages that sort of package the fact that into the complementizer. Yeah. And these other ones aren't maybe so. I mean, well, want is, and these are maybe interesting because they sort of typically go with infinitival clauses rather than with finite clauses. And here these as well. Modals definitely also. So here in some way there's sort of an ordering that these here at the bottom are more likely to take an infinitival clause as a complement. And begin and start, and yeah, perception predicates. And I mean, in this list here, because I copied this from what's his name, Noonan. I mean, there also he talks about in this language that he's working on this. There are also negative predicates. So negation is kind of like a verb and takes a complement. It's something like it's false that. It's the only way to express negation. And furthermore, he says that they have a verb that expresses something like and, but I don't know. This is something that's not available in English at all, and I can't really illustrate this here. Okay. Maybe I don't know. We were going to take a break, I assume, at some point. Maybe this is now a good point to do a break. So this yeah, then after the break I'll do some provide you with some basic semantic terminology and then we'll do something practical. I'll do a demonstration here, and then there's homework for you to practice that, and then we will continue with that on Wednesday. Okay, so I don't know, how long should the break be? 15 minutes, is that okay? So I get some air. Oh, I see. Did you send that to me as well, that email today? It's 3:30 now, so we're starting in at 3:45. Distinctions later on, so Wednesday or Friday. So the only sort of, I mean, very basic thing I wanted to point out is, no, I need to introduce the term world. So usually the semantics of embedding is viewed as involving possible worlds, and this is kind of an abstract concept adopted from philosophers, and the need for sort of talking about possible worlds is sort of in part, maybe you can sort of see this when you think about cases where you have, I mean, you would think maybe initially, well, Mary must fix a car, that it has sort of a meaning, well, there's a kind of concrete situation where Mary is fixing the car, and that is a necessary situation. or something. But if you look at things like where you have a negation there, so uh, the car must not be red, say, then there's no concrete situation when you have the negation there. I mean, the car is just, all you know that is that it's not red, but it could be green or blue or any other thing. So you kind of want to talk about different circumstances that are still possible then. And that's what sort of then motivates the worlds in some sense. So these are sort of circumstances that are completely where everything is specified. So I mean, you can think about these at this point just about as kind of events or situations or whatever. And then part of what these verbs do, embedding verbs generally do, is complement taking verbs is to quantify over circumstances. They might also quantify over other things in addition. Could be maybe clear. And I mean, but the main thing that then here, sort of as just a classification of occurrences. I mean, in principle, when you have a complement clause, you have two verbs: the matrix verb and the embedded verb, and each of them has at least a time and a world argument. So the sort of the circumstances where this described event is taking place, and then the subject and possibly an object. And in principle, I mean, you could have either identity or non-identity in all of these components. And right, so it could be the time is the same or is different, the world is the same or different, the subject is the same or different. And in fact, I mean, once you sort of look at this more, think about this more, realize that in some cases, actually, it's not even identity can sort of have two different characters to it. So a classical example of this is, we get to dream right now, is something like George dreams that he is Brigitte Bardot and he kisses himself. In that type of example, you're interpreting this as, there's sort of the dream self of George, which is actually a woman. It's Brigitte Bardot, and that's what he here is referring to. And then it says, well, he is kissing him, and this him then has to be George, right? So there's also in some sense, both of these are identical to George, the he and the him. But in the dream, they're a different person. One is Brigitte Bardot, and one is George Lakoff, who originally came up with these examples. It's not just identity, but there's also this distinction, and this is called décès and dévé, or I hear now talk about bound and unbound, and this to some extent also holds for the other arguments here for time and possibly for objects. I mean, for world arguments, it doesn't quite hold like hold. So that's okay. So now I wanted to go on to do some practical demonstration, and we have a volunteer, Wendy, who will graciously say something in Mapichana that we'll then sort of try to. Well, we won't manage today, I guess, but I mean, I'm hopefully we'll get far enough to sort of show you how to analyze this. So I will do this somewhere here. Maybe it's best if you stand here. I'll show you a video, but I hook you up here with a mic, with a microphone. So I'll just show you kind of my workflow of doing this, and as I said, I don't have a, so sorry you. I don't know, you might have to. The microphone is actually this here, right? That's the best I have right now. So if you, I don't know, plug this in and then you can do this. I don't know. No, you will have to look at the screen actually. So you go over here. Yeah, good. And so I'm just gonna. Well, no. So I'm gonna start the recording here. I mean, this is not. I mean, I saw other people here use one of these smaller, special portable recorders, which is probably better to use. And so we start just recording. But now I'll show a video I happen to have, which is here. And I mean, ideally, I would, before I do this, I would know at least 2 simple sentences in Vapichana. I know nothing. Namely, like what happened and what does a monkey think. But I'll do this now. Since Wendy speaks English, we'll hopefully manage. Okay, we do on screen. And now, so now you should watch the video, and then I'm just going to ask you 2 questions at the end, and you should answer in Vapichana. Okay? So we see a monkey here. So kind of slightly English. Don't know. Does anybody know how to get rid of this? There is a fruit that surfaced here. Actually, a lot of the action is done here. No. Sorry. Has to go. Oh, no, it's gone. Sorry, we have to start again. Okay. Yeah. Does anybody know how to? It disappeared. Okay. So now the question is something like, what does a monkey think about the nut or the fruit?
Itukpan doon i-wipen machine maran idan an bauran panokas watin ijamtan dijakan intimen kas orinik nu
And where is the nut really, or the fruit, the yellow fruit?
kanya sati bauran panokas dijakan udah atma badaja.
Okay, thank you. So that sort of, I mean, I should tell you as I mean this, those of you who were here last week for the talk I gave, actually this video didn't work for the purpose that it was originally meant for, namely the piraha, because just looking at things on the computer was just sort of too distracting overall for them, and then seeing animals move around on the computer and this anime and so on, that was all too much. But yeah, so now we have this recording here which we can save somewhere maybe. This, I don't know how to spell this actually. And I mean basically what I want. No, love. I think. Yeah, so I mean this is basically kind of for the work I did then. This would be sort of the starting point. I mean, of course, I would also do sort of normal work with informants and elicitation, and this would be kind of the work then sort of testing a broader group of people. So, and as I pointed out, when in fact an act out kind of task worked better, and I mean I have no idea what Wendy said. Of course, I'm hoping to eventually maybe argue that there's something like, well, the monkey thought that the fruit is on this side of the river or something, or behind this plant. In that. Now the next step would be then sort of from this, and that we won't maybe do here. So I would be happy to do that at some point later, Wendy. Would be to sort of together with Wendy or somebody who speaks Vapichana to transcribe this what she said, and then on the basis of that figure out what kind of complement structure is available in Vapichana in this type of scenario where it's a false belief type of scenario. I should mention at this point, I mean, I've only done this with belief really, and as and then generally this act out works even better than these movies. I mean, this was somehow because we had time to prepare for things and nothing better to do, and had this arts student who could prepare this movie and very nicely. This would probably take an untrained person years to get this kind of movie prepared. So and in general it seems to me that now that act out kind of materials are better. So here there is a homework for you to do until Wednesday. There's 3 homeworks, but this is the intellectually most most difficult one, most interesting one. I meant to say most interesting would be to sort of write out a script to elicit something other than belief. So what I have here, and also this other actor that I showed last week, is always targeting belief and something like want or other sort of classes of embedding verbs. That would be great if some of you could do that. And then I really meant would be happy to just, if you could just could do some work maybe in groups or something, and eliciting some trying out some of these scripts and eliciting some materials and analyzing them for the remainder of the on Wednesday. So that's the plan for Wednesday. Now the sort of subsequent stuff, I'm gonna just describe to you what would now happen with this type of recording. So for transcribing this, I guess first of all, because I recorded do I want to do this? I guess this was all watching, so this is very start, right? So, there's somewhat, that's at the very beginning, so, I can't hear anything, neither can you. Well, I don't know, not so prepared. I guess we could clip out here the part that actually has something in it, or we can take the whole file. So the software that I use next here, which is actually on the stick, is this program that's called Transcriber, and it is actually old. So there's something newer that's called Transcriber AG, but I don't know about this, and then and I know sort of how to convert from this into this other format that I know in a useful way that you can sort of have access directly. So that's a reason for this choice here. Now, for those of you who have a Mac like me, actually a transcriber doesn't run at all anymore on a new Macintosh, in the Macintosh version of it. So I use this. And that's not on the stick, but there's a sort of software that makes Windows programs run on a Mac called Wine Bottler, and if you apply that to Transcriber, you get something that works. So that we have here, and now we could here load this file. Maybe no transcription. And actually, maybe I would still need to hear Wendy then. Well, we got there. So we do. Also, we have here Wapi Shana. I'm feeling a little like maybe, you're very welcome to make some comments on this and suggest to me a better way of doing this. Like if any, I actually haven't used, for example, this Transcriber AG or something, and so on. So I'm gonna don't know whether that could also produce files that can be then put into sort of more of an analysis software. Anybody here have knowledge of these matters or something? I don't know how other people work with this. You all use Elan, is it? And maybe on Wednesday you could demonstrate how things are done with Elan, or you use Elan for the transcription, and then how do you? Can you get that into Toolbox or? Yeah. Oh. I see. Yeah. Well, maybe we can talk about such things at some point here. Now what I wanted to, now we have this here. I mean, I preferably would have, I think, clipped this before, and well, then we generate here transcription. I don't know. Maybe we go there. Actually, sorry. So this doesn't work so well here. Hang on. What's a little under time pressure now? I feel there was a long silence, so here there is something now. Yeah. Okay, now I mean, if we actually doing this now, I don't know how much time we have, but I mean, it's and how much interest there is in this. But now I would actually here invite Wendy to transcribe this for me. If you could, please, Wendy, or like, I mean, Wendy, actually, could you come and can you write this in rough form? What I mean, at least part of it. So we mark up here. So this was. I mean, I guess we do here sentences. So this is all. Sorry, no. Well, let's do here. So I mean, here it's. So now, you know, with this you hear, and then. Maybe we put another. There's a break in some way here, right? It would be even better if you just typed it here. So. No. Please type the in some way a representation of the Vapishana. Not the translation. Translation is the next stage. You can always listen to it again if you do hear it.
Okay.
I can send the products of this also to you, Silly. Or if you just send me a link to this Dropbox, then I can directly upload that. I would also be happy to actually have the email list that you have of the participants.
Okay.
So this last bit you didn't. Yes, you don't know. Okay, now we do maybe a little more. Of course, I mean, I don't know, of course, exactly how to divide this up into segments. No, sorry. Here we are.
Change the N to
This N,
no M.
M, this one.
E.
Okay. Then I think this is me talking, right? And where is the nut? Really, as a fruit, the yellow fruit.
Kayaknya saat di bawah dampan oker digerakkan. Udah.
And where is the nut? Really, as a fruit, the yellow fruit.
Kayaknya saat di bawah dampan oker digerakkan. Udah atma pada aja.
So this is Wendy again. Okay. Wonderful. So probably, I mean, probably my dividing this up was not quite right, but this can be still fixed here then in the sound file by just sort of copying things around here, and that, I mean, this seems to belong more together than I thought, based on the break in between the two of them. I don't know. Another? I mean, what can we conclude now? Nothing at this point, right? This is the other sentence. Yeah, I think we just also want to transcribe this one, and then we maybe then I'll send that to you, and you guys think about it until Wednesday. That's the goal here. What do I do now? Here, there. We do translate. So we have to just go on like this, Wendy. Kaim, yeah. There is, okay. Just to use that for now. And I'm sure you noticed already that I'm like not the most proficient user of this either, but or maybe it can be glossed as exist. That's sort of the same as exist. Then it, at least in English, looks more like a verb. Yep. So shati is, we do is that one word or shati or? Okay, okay. And we leave that open for now, just okay. And these two we know already, so that's good. So I only remembered Panau cows, but so dieser kann one. I see. I see. I didn't. In Dijon. Oh. Okay, so we put Dijon here, and then try to do this again. No, that was wrong. Sorry. Wow. No, that was also not what I wanted. Should be like this. Anybody know? I don't know. Can. So it's some kind of. No, this. I forgot. I mean, with the Dijon, we have to. add to the déjà, right? Hang on. Does anybody know? I mean, I think it's A, right, for sort of morphological variant. So déjà. Problem is in part here my lack of overview. Yeah. Does any of you know how to add a sort of alternative, some code like A, I think, for with toolbox, but oh yeah, A maybe, or then maybe it's here. No, maybe. Let's try A. Turn around déjà. Okay. Yeah, no, it worked. Okay, and finally, two more to go. No, three more. Okay. Atom. Three. Okay. Buddy. There's one word here, like this. Behind the whole thing. Okay. Okay, last thing, we add some translations here. Free translation, FT. Maybe this first. I mean, and then I mean, we have kind of a raw material for thinking about the actual structures here, and so what did this first part mean? I can also now I can play the sound to you again. You won't be able to hear it. But here, so there's this here under tools, and then play sound. Didn't work. Because this is oh. I don't know. I mean, once again. Okay, doesn't seem to be working right now. Okay. Anyway, do you have a translation for me then? Or otherwise, we'll just call it a day now. Yeah, we still have 6 more minutes. So. What after? Yeah. But then the other animal hides it, right? Or this is here. Right? Or another animal comes and hides it. Right? And this do make this bigger. There is another animal that hid it just behind the tree. No, sorry, I didn't quite understand here. I see. Then, yeah, maybe we leave that for later, okay? So I think, I mean, this kind of stuff, even though you see that, I mean, it's kind of, I look fairly clumsy up here, I feel. But, I mean, if you do this for a bunch of sentences and then possibly with different speakers or a bunch of sort of different scenarios, you get really quite nice data on how people actually express and use these different sort of potentially complement-taking verbs. And well, I mean, at this point, since I know really nothing about Vapichana, it's not very deep what I can say about this really, and what's this. And I mean, possibly also these videos are a little bit too confusing to sort of because they're rather long, and this is the act out kind of thing was a little more direct and easier to talk about, and the whole setup here is a little. But I mean, we have here. I don't know. I mean, do we have actually? Yeah. I mean, no, we didn't actually, at this point, get anything that looks like really a complement clause. If this is by translation, so this is more like an adverbial clause, maybe in English, is when he sees it. So, I probably should have asked more directly about thinking, and but it's also maybe difficult to just attribute thoughts to animals here, and so there are many problems maybe. Okay, so yeah, what I suggest, and that how we continue on Wednesday is that actually you bring some scripts, and maybe somebody else here from the class, like I hear that there's also a speaker of another interesting language, but it could also be some Portuguese or something, that we try this out a little bit and criticize sort of the kind of scenarios that or these kind of act out things that you came up with, and try to generate a bigger corpus of sentences, and then I hope that for the paper of the class you will be inspired enough to go somewhere and really do a little bit of this work. Like, I mean, it's not rocket science, obviously, but if you have, I mean, now this if you find actually then some examples, attested examples where you see one of these complement taking verbs used When here we see 1, but it really takes a nominal complement. Then it would be a nice basis for sort of then writing a paper about and describing exactly what's going on with that type of example. Exactly, just at least describing in some way what's going on with that. So that's kind of the plan for Wednesday then, okay? So for today then we're kind of done. I think all this technical stuff I did describe on the handout. I now didn't tell you this in so much detail because I was also a little bit embarrassed about my old-fashioned ways here. And I meant to mention that I'm also myself not very proficient with this, but I know that this guy who I worked with together in Indonesia, Vantišek Kartochvil, who's now in Singapore, he still does things this way, and he does get good results with this type of procedure. He is much faster at this than I am. Especially with Toolbox, I'm not very good because it's always running under this emulation, and I don't remember the keyboard shortcuts so well. Okay, so yeah, please. Especially, so I'm asking you also to sort of do a little bit of testing of this software so that we can really do some work here in class together, not just me here in the front, so that I don't have to always embarrass myself here, or so. And then we can, it would be nice. So if in addition to sort of coming up with a script, so this should be really like, well, he says this and he said that, or goes there and so on, that people, however many people you want to involve in some act out tasks, that you do this, and that they know what to do, and then try to persuade some audience member who speaks an interesting language to participate, and then we can look at those recordings, and we can talk about some details of that. Okay, so that was it from me for today.